Alright everybody, we're back, and this time it's going to be to break down the UFC 292 card, which is going to take place from Boston, Massachusetts at the TD Garden on August 19th, 2023. We're going to break down the top 6 fights that I think are going to be on the card. Obviously, we'll have more fights announced when we get closer to the date in August, but for right now, this looks to be one of the best cards of the year and potentially one of the best pay-per-views of all time. Now, obviously, we don't know if that's going to be the case once the fights end up playing out, but we're going to kick it off with a bout in the middleweight division with the return of the former middleweight champion in Chris the All-American Weidman, the man to hand Anderson Silva his first ever defeat. And he's going to be taking on Brad Tavares, who's coming off of that loss against Bruno Silva, but he is also a former Ultimate Fighter winner and a very solid and technical striker on the feet. I think that this is a difficult matchup for Chris Weidman to come back to, but I also feel like if he can return to form, or at least somewhat the form he was in when he was the middleweight champion, with the victories over Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, etc., that his wrestling should give Brad Tavares some trouble. I think he will be able to implement the takedowns, the chaining of takedown attempts together, head on the inside, single head on the outside, single, double leg, running the pipe, using the crackdown series and the single leg to get the takedowns, and potentially looking to use his elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, which we haven't seen in a long time, but I think if he's able to ground Tavares, he should be able to work for his submissions, ground and pound, and then maybe even using the ground and pound to pepper and butter up Tavares to eventually lock up a submission such as a guillotine, a rear naked choke, a darce, and things like that. And his striking does look good. I mean, even if you go back to a fight that was a long time ago at this point against Jacare Souza where he lost that fight, his striking looked very crisp, very clean. He's got knockout power on the feet, but I think standing up and striking on the feet against Brad Tavares is not the best idea. I think that Tavares is a lot faster. I think he's more technical with his kickboxing. I would say that Weidman is better with his boxing in terms of technical ability, but overall kickboxing, body kicks, low kicks, mixing up between the punches and the kicks, I think he will give Weidman some trouble in Brad Tavares, and I think he could potentially knock out Chris Weidman. I think this is a tough fight to call. I think that this is a close fight, but I am going to side ever so slightly with Brad Tavares, the former Ultimate Fighter winner. After that leg break that Weidman suffered, and this will be his first time returning since that leg break, I can't really have any confidence in him coming back and showcasing the form that he had when he was the middleweight champion or something close to it. This is a good fight. This is a solid matchmaking opportunity, and it showcases good matchmaking, but I just don't think I could side with Weidman at this point. So I think Tavares is going to eventually finish him, but I could see a decision. I'll go with Tavares by decision for an early prediction, but obviously with all these fights we're going to talk about, we'll give more in-depth predictions once we get closer to the card. Up next, we have a phenomenal fight in the UFC's bantamweight division that just got announced a few days ago between the number 7 ranked contender coming off of that knockout victory over the formerly undefeated Adrian Yanez in hometown native and Boston native in Rob Font, taking on the number 8 ranked contender coming off of a knockout victory in his own right over Ricky Simone in a UFC Fight Night main event in Song Yadong. Rob Font and Song Yadong is a fight that I've actually been pretty interested in seeing for a long time now. They've always been pretty close in the rankings, but Font was always ranked a little too high for Song Yadong to the point where it wouldn't make sense if the fight was booked. But at this point, it's perfect, and I'm happy that they put it together. If it wasn't going to be this, I thought that Peter Yan versus Song Yadong or Rob Font versus Peter Yan was a great fight to see, but we obviously don't know when Peter Yan's going to step back into the octagon. But looking at Rob Font and Song Yadong, I think there's going to be a big speed advantage on the side of the Kung Fu Kid in Yadong. He's going to have a lot more speed with his punching combinations, his stance changes, and his kicks. I think the biggest weapon that he's going to want to implement in this fight is going to be using the kicks to slow down Rob Font and then using the kicks to set up the hands. A lot of the time you hear use the hands to set up the kicks, but if he can slow down Font, use the head kicks, the low kicks, the inside and outside low kicks, feint the jab, throw the right low kick, and then use his kicks to set up his punches, which we've seen him actually knock people out with, such as Julio Arce, where he was able to land that right high kick and then chamber it back into a same side right cross, which hurt his opponent. I think that that's a big big weapon for him against Font. And the speed, if you're faster than Font, it seems to give him some trouble. But if he can get the timing and use that world-class jab, I feel like he can get Song Yadong behind on the volume. And as long as he can stick that jab in his face and slow him down, he's going to be able to set up his boxing combinations, his stance-changing uppercuts, his 1-2 right hook, switch to southpaw, left uppercut, same side left high kick, the uppercut cross, same side high kick like he used to knock out Thomas Almeida with back in Boston. I think that if Font can implement that jab and get the timing and slow down Song Yadong and make that speed not be as much of a factor by using the jab and the feints, the fakes, the feint right hand to the jab, the double jab, the 1-2 down the middle, the 1-2-3-4 right uppercut, 1-2-3, play with the guard, manipulate the opponent's guard, and throw the uppercut up the middle like he dropped Marlon Moraes with. I feel like he can give Song Yadong some trouble, but it's all going to play off of his jab. And I also think him using the takedowns, which we've seen Font implement in certain fights, he has good takedown defense. He has good defensive jiu-jitsu, such as using the Kimura to sweep the opponents like he used against Cody Garbrandt to work his way back up to the feet. He seems to use defensive jiu-jitsu and scrambles and setting up submission attempts to work his way back up to the feet and get up to a hip if he does get taken down. It's kind of like a anti-wrestling setup to defend against the wrestling. He uses jiu-jitsu as wrestling defense. But I think this is a great fight. I do think the kicking game of Song Yadong will give Rob Font some trouble, but I am going to say that Rob Font is going to eventually be able to use that jab and slow down Song Yadong. But early, the speed and power of Song Yadong could hurt Rob Font. We've seen Font get hurt in fights where he was behind, or not fights where he was behind, but fights where he was ahead, such as the Marlon Chito Vera main event, where he doubled up, tripled up his strikes, but was always getting hurt and caught with big shots. I think it could be similar here, where Font's going to have more volume, but the speed and power of Song Yadong is going to give him some trouble. I think this is a very, very hard fight to call, but I am going to go with Rob Font to be able to slow down Song Yadong with that jab, get it in his face, maybe have some adversity early, but survive, and then slow him down and work his boxing combinations to win a decision, really closing out strong in that last round. But I am going to side with Rob Font and Font to win by decision. Up next is going to be a very interesting matchup in the bantamweight division between former bantamweight champion and former flyweight contender, I guess you could say, but he wasn't even really a contender because he only fought one time in the weight class, in Cody No Love Garbrandt taking on Mario Bautista. This is a very, very good fight. I don't believe Bautista is ranked in the division at this point, but I think he's going to be ranked after this fight. I think this is a terrible fight for Cody Garbrandt. I'm a big Cody Garbrandt fan. I picked him to win in his last fight against Trevin Jones, and he did what he needed to do. He was faster. He had, the cleaner striking combinations. He was able to use his wrestling, but he did slow down, and he did get hit a lot later in that fight to the point where it looked like maybe Trevin Jones was going to get him out of there and put him out. But at the same time, Mario Bautista, they have similar opponents. Bautista got knocked out by Trevin Jones as well, getting caught with a big shot and hurt by Trevin 5-star Jones. So yes, they both, one lost to Trevin Jones and one won against Trevin Jones. So if you're using MMA math, then maybe you would give the advantage to Cody Garbrandt. I think Cody Garbrandt is going to have the speed advantage. I think he's going to have the boxing advantage on the feet. He's going to have the much faster hands and the ability to chain up punches and kicks in his combinations, using the punching and kicking to close the distance and then use his offensive wrestling as well. But I do not think the wrestling is going to work very well for him against Bautista, because I think even if he does get those takedowns and uses them as counter wrestling attempts, he's gonna get caught in a submission. He's gonna get out scrambled. And I know Cody's fast, but on the floor against Bautista has amazing jiu-jitsu, really good scrambling, really good floating in the top position. He can move effortlessly from mount, half guard, side control, reverse scarf position, working to, the crucifix position, allowing you to give up your back, putting the hooks in, looking for a rear naked choke, allowing you to stand up, looking for trips inside the clinch, the over-under positions, the inside and outside trips, going for takedowns, going back up to the body lock, looking to duck under and get the back and then look to lock up a rear naked choke. He's going to be relentless with his submission attempts, and he also has power on the feet. He changes stances, uses switch stance combinations. I think he does have the power to hurt Cody Garbrandt on the feet, especially at this point where we know that his chin is not the best. best, and he kind of has to fight a lot smarter and more technical. But if this is a pure striking matchup, I think that Cody Garbrandt could win it, because he could maybe catch Bautista with a big shot and hurt him. He does still have power, but I don't like his chin, and I really think he's going to get out grappled, which is something we haven't really seen for Cody Garbrandt, aside from maybe the fight with Rob Font, where Font was able to use some Kimura sweeps like we talked about earlier. But I'm going to side with Mario Bautista here. I've picked him a lot on my podcast. I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of Cody Garbrandt, so it hurts me to say it, but I think Bautista is going to be too much for him in the jiu-jitsu department. I think he's going to be able to out-scramble Cody. He might hurt him on the feet with a big shot, jump a guillotine or an arming guillotine, and eventually get him out of there. If he doesn't get the guillotine, I think he probably hurts him with a shot on the feet, has Cody panic wrestle, spins around, takes the back, and locks up that rear naked choke. So I'm going to side with Mario Bautista to defeat the former champion in Cody Garbrandt, the former bantamweight champion in Cody Garbrandt, and really make a statement in this performance. I am kind of rooting for Cody Garbrandt because I've always been a really big fan of his, but I think it's just Bautista's time, and I think this is a really, really hard fight for Cody Garbrandt. So give me Mario Bautista to defeat Cody Garbrandt by a second round rear naked choke submission. Kind of a club and sub type of scenario, if you catch my drift. Up next is a great fight in the UFC's welterweight division between the now ranked number 13 ranked and undefeated Ian Machado Gary taking on the man who's coming off of that loss in a back and forth war against another undefeated fighter in Shavkat Rakhmonov, in Jeff Hands of Steel Neal, who's ranked, I believe, in the top 10 of the division, ranked number 8 in the welterweight division. This is a really solid fight, and I'm going to be honest, I picked against Ian Gary with Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. I thought Rodriguez's boxing was going to hurt Ian Machado Gary on the feet. I thought he was going to be able to use that check hook, the straight left hand, the jab into the check hook to get the outside foot, and really just piece up Ian Gary with his boxing. However, going up against an orthodox fighter and being a southpaw, we really didn't even have time to think about that, as Machado Gary landed that cross into the same side head kick as Daniel Rodriguez slipped off the center line of the cross, ran right into the high kick, got dropped, and got TKO'd in round 1 by Ian Machado Gary. Huge win for Gary, really solid performance, but I feel like Jeff Neal is a different animal. We saw in his last fight prior to the fight against Daniel Rodriguez, which was against, I cannot think of it. Was it Song Kanan? Kanan Song? I can't think of the name. Let me look. Song Kanan, I was right. He won that fight via third round TKO, but early in that fight, he got hit with a big overhand. I believe it was either an overhand or a check hook, and got dropped and rocked and looked like he was going to get put out. And then he got back up to his feet, but he was still wobbly. He was hurt very bad by Song Kanan. And I think if you play around with the striking of Jeff Neal is a sniper. I did a breakdown on him a long time ago. I picked him to beat Shavkat Rakhmonov. I thought we were going to get it. It was a back and forth fight. He hurt Rakhmonov over and over again with that straight left hand and the check right hook, using the outside foot, outside angles, and constantly circling away to land his beautiful boxing, where he has some of the best boxing in the welterweight division. But eventually Rakhmonov was able to hurt him with multiple kicks to the body, knees to the body, and knees up top to the head, slow him down, and eventually lock up the standing bulldog choke or palm to palm rear naked choke in the third round. I'm not sure if Rakhmonov would have won that fight if it went to a decision. I was kind of hoping it did make it to the decision and Neal would survive, and maybe he could have got the nod on the judges' scorecards. But in this fight, I think that the kicking game of Ian Gary can give Jeff Neal some trouble, but the constant lateral movement, the footwork, the angles, the constant side-to-side movement, and the piston of a straight left hand that Jeff Neal has, the same side left cross into the left high kick like he used to knock down Bilal Muhammad with, who's coming off a big win over Gilbert Burns. The left hand that he used to constantly piece up Vicente Luque before he knocked him out with a multitude of uppercuts and then faded off to the rear side, rolled underneath, and landed a hook into the cross on the rear side, the 3-2, and dropped Luque up against the cage, being the only man to ever finish Vicente Luque inside the cage. I think that we have to worry about Machado Gary coming off that win over Daniel Rodriguez. You have to give him his credit. You have to give him his due. And I think the kicking game and the speed of Machado Gary could potentially hurt Jeff Neal on the feet, but I think eventually that straight left's going to find a home, and once it finds a home, it's going to continue to find a home, and I think Jeff Neal will piece up Ian Gary on the feet. I think Gary is a little bit of a defensive liability. I think he has some issues on the feet, and his defensive responsibility isn't the highest. Jeff Neal gets hit a lot too, and like I said, you do have to worry about the kicking game of Ian Gary if he uses his punching to set up his kicks and is able to catch Jeff Neal around the guard or hurt him to the body with his roundhouse kicks, you know, being southpaw versus orthodox, or orthodox for Gary to southpaw for Neal. The rear back kick to the body is going to be a big weapon for him, and potentially setting up the cross into the high kick like he knocked out another southpaw in Daniel D. Rodriguez. But I think Jeff Neal's going to get it done, man. I think he's going to hurt Ian Gary with the straight left over and over again. I think he's going to use the right hook to the straight left, the 3-2, the 2-3, the 2 to the 3 to the 2 to the lead uppercut. I think he's going to hurt Gary early and hurt him often and eventually get him out of there by TKO. So I'm going to side with the much more experienced, I would say, and at least at the higher level, more high-level experience in Jeff Hands of Steel Neal to hand Ian Machado Gary his first professional defeat via a second round knockout. This is a great fight, but I am going to side with Jeff Neal, and I think he does get it done here. Up next, we're going to move to a fight which was just recently confirmed in the last couple days, along with a lot of fights on this card, and a fight that really came out of left field with Henry Triple C Cejudo, you know, coming back after losing that razor-thin decision against the champion in Aljamain Sterling at UFC 288. He's going to be returning at UFC 292 to take on another fighter who was very close to getting a title shot but came off that decision loss to Corey the Sandman Sandhagen in Marlon Chito Vera. Marlon Vera versus Henry Cejudo is very interesting, but when you look at this fight on paper, it's going to be Henry Cejudo winning the rounds. It's going to be Henry Cejudo who's going to have a massive wrestling advantage. He's going to be able to take down Marlon Vera. He's going to be able to control him from the top, and you know, Marlon Vera does have good jiu-jitsu. He does have good submissions, but in a fight against Corey Sandhagen, he was getting taken down, he was getting controlled from the top, and he didn't really have much to offer against a guy in Corey Sandhagen who's not known for having really solid grappling, who's not known for using his wrestling offensively and more using the wrestling defensively to either reverse, sweep, scramble, work his way back up to the feet, or just stuff the takedowns in general and get back to the striking distance where he wants to keep the fight for the majority of it. I think that is going to be a big problem for Marlon Vera in this fight against Cejudo. I think Cejudo will have trouble on the feet against Vera, but I do think the speed of Cejudo will give Vera some trouble on the feet as well. I think this is Henry Cejudo's fight to win, but it could be a case where Cejudo's winning the rounds and eventually Marlon Vera catches him with a head kick, catches him with an elbow, catches him with a step-in elbow, catches him with a knee, catches him with a front kick, rocks Cejudo, and has the more damaging moments to where he could either finish Cejudo late in a round where Cejudo's clearly ahead and winning comfortably, or he could steal rounds by winning the rounds based on damage by hurting Cejudo towards the end of the round, even if he was down on volume, kind of like the Rob Font fight in the UFC Fight Night main event. But at the end of the day, I think the wrestling is going to be too big of an advantage for Cejudo. I think he will be the faster fighter on the feet, and he will be able to close the distance and use the wrestling when he wants to. If I want to make a pick based on emotion and who I want to win, I'd like to see Marlon Vera front kick Cejudo's head all the way back to the Olympics. But based on actually, you know, breaking down the fight from a technical standpoint, I think Cejudo's going to be a little bit too much for Marlon Vera. I think even in a 5-rounder, he would be too much for Marlon Vera because he can keep up that cardio and keep up that pace like we saw in the razor-thin decision loss to the champion in Aljamain Sterling. But I am going to side with Henry Cejudo to get the win. I think he gets the win done via decision, but I think it's a pretty dominant win there as long as he can avoid the big damaging moments and the damaging shots from Marlon Vera. All right, and then a fight that I'm very excited to talk about for the Women's Strawweight Championship. You have the champion in Zhang Weili taking on the number 4 ranked contender in Amanda Lemos. This is a coin flip of a fight. Zhang Weili is going to have the better grappling. She's going to have the better wrestling. And if she wants to win this fight and do so dominantly, she's going to want to get in on the hips of Amanda Lemos, take her down, control from the top position, land ground and pound, and look to set up submission attempts like she did against Carla Esparza. But she did that mainly by hurting her on the feet and then hurting her with ground and pound. On the feet, I actually think the more dangerous fighter is Amanda Lemos. I think she's better defensively. I think she's a lot more powerful than Zhang Zhang Weili, and I think that's something that Zhang Weili isn't really used to. I think that Zhang Weili wasn't as powerful as Jessica Andrade, but the speed made up for the power. I think that Zhang Weili is fast, but I also think that Amanda Lemos is more technical with her Muay Thai on the feet. She has beautiful hooks, beautiful kicks to the body, beautiful ability to change stances and use hooks into body kicks, hooks into head kicks, 1-2s, big left hooks, big right hooks. And yes, she does wind up with her hooks, does Amanda Lemos, but she has that God-given one-hitter-quitter knockout power. She knocked out Marina Rodriguez, who's one of the best strikers in the division, even though it was a standing TKO and the ref jumped in and people thought maybe it shouldn't have been stopped. If the ref didn't stop that there, Lemos was going to have at least 15 to 20 more big, powerful shots that would have eventually put Marina Rodriguez on ice and knocked her out cold. So overall, breaking down the fight, I think the more technical fighter on the feet is Amanda Lemos. I think the more powerful fighter on the feet is Amanda Lemos. I think the more dangerous fighter on the feet is Lemos. I think the faster fighter on the feet is Zhang Weili. I think the fighter with the way better wrestling and the glaring omissions for Amanda Lemos being the takedown defense and ability to work their way back up to the feet and submission defense. I think that Zhang Weili's best way to win this fight is to use her wrestling, is to use her grappling, is to dictate the pace, get in the clinch, take down Lemos, look to defend the guillotine because Lemos will jump to go to the guillotine choke if she's able to get that front headlock position. But the best weapon for Zhang Weili to win is to use her wrestling. I think she's a smart fighter. I think she could use it, but I'm gonna side with Ann New. I actually think Amanda Lemos is going to catch Zhang Weili. Weili has never been the best defensively. She just is so fast with her punching and kicking combinations that she sacrifices her defense based on her ability to be the much faster fighter, and she kind of punches with her head on the center line and uses, multi-shot combinations with her boxing, kind of like traditional martial arts style of karate or taekwondo punches, and stepping into range, landing good inside low kicks, good high kicks. She has good kicks, but she leaves her head on the center line a little too much for my liking in the boxing exchanges, and I think one of those big hooks from Lemos is going to catch Zhang Weili on the chin and knock her out. So I'm actually going to go with and New in Amanda Lemos Amandina. Amanda Amandina Lemos to improve to 14-2-1 and become the new UFC strawweight champion by defeating Zhang Weili via a second round knockout. I just don't like the defense of Zhang Weili on the feet, and I think she's going to play around a little bit too long on the feet against Lemos, get caught and get finished. So give me Amanda Lemos to defeat Zhang Weili by second round knockout. Alright, and then we get to the main event for the UFC Bantamweight Championship between the man who everybody loves to hate and the reigning defending UFC Bantamweight Champion in Aljamain the Funkmaster Sterling, defending the title against a fan favorite fighter, a social media megastar when it comes to MMA, and a fighter who only has one loss in his professional mixed martial arts career in Sugar Sean O'Malley. O'Malley is currently ranked, let's see, what's his ranking in the division? He's ranked number 1, right? Currently ranked number 2 in the Bantamweight division, holding a record of 16 victories with 1 defeat, the 1 loss coming via that TKO, which started off with low kicks to the peroneal nerve against Marlon Chito Vera, taking on Aljamain the Funkmaster Sterling, who currently holds a record of 23 victories and 3 defeats, coming off of that split decision victory over Henry the Messenger Cejudo, further cementing his claim as the Bantamweight GOAT. I think this is a very dangerous fight for both men, because here's the thing, this fight could look just like Corey Sandhagen and Aljamain Sterling, where Sean O'Malley tries to enter into range, he's changing his stances, he's moving left and right, moving in and out, very light on the feet, overextends on a punch, O'Malley gets ducked under, Sterling's able to take the back, get to the hooks, get the rear naked choke, and choke O'Malley unconscious in round 1, or O'Malley can keep that range and distance, use those front kicks from the lead and rear leg, and use the long rangy lead uppercuts to the right hands, the switch stances, the constant left hook right hand, the 1-2s down the middle. The biggest shots for Sean O'Malley are going to be the long range attacks, the front kicks to the body, the teep kicks, the snap kicks, the head kicks, the 1-2s, the jab, the hook to the right cross, the hook to the cross, the hook from southpaw to the left cross, the 1-2s down the middle, the feint uppercut to the straight right hand like he used to knock out Eddie Wineland. I think in a striking matchup, Sean O'Malley clearly outstrikes Aljamain Sterling, but in a grappling matchup, Aljamain Sterling clearly gets Sean O'Malley down to the floor, takes his back, ground and pounds him, and eventually chokes him out. Even though Sean O'Malley showcased better grappling, better takedown defense, better counter wrestling in the fight against Peter Yan, where he won via split decision, where a lot of people believed he didn't win. But if you go back and watch it, I'm not saying I think he won. I still think Petr Yan should have got the decision, but that seems to be the story in a lot of his recent fights, aside from the fight against Merab Dvalishvili, where he got dominated. I think that, you know, the wrestling's going to be no match for Aljamain Sterling, and if Sterling's able to get in on those hips early, he'll take him down, get O'Malley to give up his back and lock up that rear naked choke and get him out of there. But if he can stop the takedowns, or even if he can catch him stepping in with a front kick, catch him stepping in with a knee to the body, catch the level change with a knee or an uppercut, or catch him with those long rangy 1-2s and straight punches, then Sean O'Malley can knock Aljamain Sterling out cold on the feet. This is the best example of striker versus grappler. O'Malley's going to have a clear advantage in the speed and technique on the feet, and especially in the variety of the strikes, but Sterling is going to have the huge advantage with the grappling, the chain wrestling, the top pressure, the ability to become what he wants to be known as in the human backpack, and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, an amazing and elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and submission game. I think that Aljamain Sterling is going to get the takedown early on O'Malley and get that rear naked choke submission in the first round, but honestly, I'm really not a fan of Sean O'Malley, and I'm really not a fan of Sterling, but I would much rather see Sterling get knocked out here, so I'm kind of rooting for O'Malley, but I think Sterling gets it done by first round submission.